Marla Hexter.
Here.
Chuck Light. Here. Andrew Belmore. Here. Paul Maxey. Here. Tom Manning. Here. Terry Frederick. Here. The announcements, township meetings are recorded for the purpose of preparing the minutes, and the recording is to wait 6 months after the minutes are recorded. It is requested that all persons wishing to speak before the board shall state their name, address, and the subject matter upon which they wish to speak for the record. In the interest of facilitating the business of the board, all persons addressing the board shall be limited to 2 minutes, unless such time is extended by the chairman for good cause. Individuals are requested to remain in their seats and to respect when other persons are speaking. The Board of Supervisors will provide a reasonable opportunity for citizens to comment on any non-agenda items after all agenda items have been addressed, but prior to the adjournment of the public meeting adopted. 1:30:18. Approval of the minutes. October 30th. Do one at a time.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. November 7th.
So moved with the addition, Marla had some edits on Sunday, I believe it was. I want to include those edits for the final version.
Terry? Is that okay?
Yes.
You have the-
Yes, can you hear me?
Sort of.
Sort of. Yes, do you want me to read the edits or?
As long as they're three. Yeah,
The
understand.
question was, will you include that, and then tell them how to include it.
Yes.
I will move with those additional changes.
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. January 7th.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. February 5th.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions? Vote? Aye.
And we are up to date, folks.
Administrative actions. Approval to pay February invoices and accept treasurer's report. You have a motion?
No, just a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any questions? Vote?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment on agenda items. Yes.
Yes, my name is Brian Bond, I live in Zieglerville Road. Since now the minutes have been approved for the months that are listed on the agenda, I'd ask either one of the board members or someone to comment on specifically what was the purpose of holding up November's, and I can't not look at the agenda, but the two that are fairly outstanding, if someone could please comment on those.
There was, it was just simply the minutes, the process I used was to take what I had on file, and I, of course, forwarded that on to the Board of Supervisors, and we made the various corrections, and I got an individual make corrections. I would make corrections to that draft, send it to the board. So it's simply a continuing process to try to get the minutes as precise as possible. I think sometimes what would happen is that the more we would look at the minutes, even though we had made some changes the week before, we realized a few more changes need to be made. So it's one of those things, you keep looking at something, you keep finding more things that need to be changed. But at the end of the day, we did get our entire board to agree that the minutes are in good shape.
I appreciate the generality, but there were very specific specific items that seem to be sticking points.
Not one in particular. There were literally dozens of corrections or additions. Mostly a lot of the corrections would be some simple things like spring mount was one word instead of two words. And a number of folks who spoke, their names were misspelled. So there was about 50% of those changes. That was the sort of change that was made. And the rest were adding a sentence here or a sentence there for clarification purposes.
May I go as much as further to ask each one of the supervisors to comment on specifically the last of the October and November meeting minutes that maybe were a concern to them? That's why they didn't approve the meeting minutes?
I'll speak for myself. I just want to echo what Terry said. There were a lot of places in those two sets of minutes where there were just inaccuracies. I mean, I'll give an example of something that I said in one meeting where what I said about two things actually flipped, so it made the statement inaccurate, so we just had to flip it. And that, I think that gives you an idea of what we saw in both of those sets of minutes. They were complicated, they were long meetings, and again, we would go through it once and catch a lot of the mistakes or inaccuracies, we went through it again, we might catch other things, we went through it again, we caught other things. It's exactly what Terry said.
I appreciate your comment, but in I reflect back over the 2018 year, we never had this kind of hold up. I'd ask the chairman if you could respond, if that's possible.
I think if you read the minutes now that they're approved and see what you can see them, I'd rather you figure it out yourself.
All right, I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you. Reports. Township engineer. Carol?
I had hoped for a very short report tonight because we opened bids a week ago for materials and equipment. We do that every year. It's normally a very simple process. We tabulated the bids and then I reviewed the bid documents for completeness to recommend action of the board tonight. We ran into some challenges. So, I'm going to start with the materials bid. There were 3 bids submitted in response to the invitation to bid for supplying aggregate and bituminous materials. The bids were opened on February 27th. The bids were reviewed and tabulated, but there was a discrepancy. The apparent low bidder for the aggregate and bituminous was Highway Materials of Flowertown. Regrettably, they did not sign their bid for their bid documents. So I was very fortunate to have such support from the Township Solicitor's Office. I called over there this morning and we reviewed the matter. And based on their recommendation and consultations, tonight I'm recommending in a letter I just handed to the board this evening that the Township consider rejecting all bids and rebidding the materials contract. And I'm going to pause there if the solicitor has anything to add at this point or the board has any questions on this particular item.
I do, thank you. So the way Pennsylvania law is written, any township has the ability to reject any bid for the best interest of the township. In this case, there is indeed an issue as regards the signature, and we anticipate that the bidder, the lowest responsible bidder, will claim that there was not a need at this point to sign, because there is some language in that document, it's a PennDOT document that is a little unclear, and meanwhile, from our end, we'd like that document signed. So in order to avoid all that, I suggest that the township is well positioned to reject this bid at this point, just rebid it, and we'll come in with clean documentation we anticipate for the next one. So this would be a motion to reject the bid as regards to the materials
Any questions? Vote.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Aye.
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 Okay, the next was the equipment bid. So 2 bids were submitted in response to the invitation to bid on equipment rental. They were opened on February 27th. The equipment rental is the contract that provides equipment operators and labor for road work at hourly rates. There was a discrepancy in this bid again. The 2 bids were from Sachs & Sons and P.K. Moyer. Sachs & Sons was the lowest of the 2 bids. In the documentation that I downloaded from PennBid, which is the bid exchange where these bids are processed or are loaded, there was not a bid bond downloaded. And so, again, I consulted our attorney's office, I advised the contractor, and then I reached out to PennBid. And late this afternoon, they reached out to me by email and advised that there is some evidence that there was a bid bond uploaded that didn't get into the portion of the system that came down to me. So they're investigating that right now. That's a very complicated explanation that leads to this recommendation. I would suggest that the board table this bid for consideration at the next regular meeting while we get more information from PennBid on the status of this bid bond.
So to clarify, when you say the next regular meeting, you mean next month, not if we need the next meeting, if we have a work session?
Either one would be suitable. Whatever suits the board.
Before we go into anything else, to whom it may concern, this is to confirm that upon consultation with the township solicitor, I will abstain from participation in the discussions and any vote by the Lower Frederick Township Board of Supervisors as to the equipment bid, as I'm employed by the Sachs & Sons, and participation could be seen as a conflict of interest under the Ethics Act, so I want to be sure to avoid any debate about that.
All right, so you have a signed letter to that effect, which we'll hand to the township secretary in compliance with Pennsylvania ethics.
Yes.
Good. All right, so you're not going to participate? No, it's actually, I think it's the person who actually is taking the minutes, but we'll give it to you as the township secretary. Right, and that'll be maintaining the township file. So our vice chair should take over at this point, as Chairman Sachs should not participate, not only in the vote, but in the discussion.
So what we have now is a recommendation is to table this discussion until we gain further information.
My recommendation to stay in compliance with the code is that you table it for a specific meeting date in the future. If you would like to make that your next public meeting, that would be suitable. I will have information for you and a recommendation prepared for that meeting.
Okay, so the resolution is to table this until the next scheduled meeting, whenever that is. It will either be at the end of the month or the beginning of next month.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Of a second.
Thank you. I have no...
Call for a vote.
Okay. Vote?
Aye.
Aye.
I have no other items in my report this evening. Thank you.
Police, monthly report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the month of February, there were 201 calls for service in the township. 126 were responded to by the Lower Frederick Township Police, 75 were covered by the Pennsylvania State Police, and we received checks totaling $111.86 from various sources throughout Montgomery County. These monies represented fines and restitutions paid by defendants in criminal and traffic-related matters. I also wanted to report to the board that I had a really wonderful experience on the 27th. I was invited to go to the Western Montgomery County Career and Technology Center in Limerick, and was asked to be a mock interviewer for kids that are involved in the securities program there. And What that is that for people in the community who don't know, these are kids that come from surrounding neighborhood school districts. I couldn't name them all, but there's multiple districts that make up this program. And the Western Center is really, in the past it would have been called a VOTEC, but it's really so much more now. And I was just so pleasantly surprised as I was sitting there interviewing prospective candidates for future positions. And it's not saying that they were applying for be police officers or firefighters or EMTs today, but they were seniors who had completed the program and were going to be going on to either secondary education, some were going on to serve in the armed services. And I just was really blown away by how articulate and professional, as well as how knowledgeable a lot of these young people were. And I just think that as a father myself, I sometimes think that we in society don't pay tribute enough to younger generations. And this was just a reminder to me that we do have a lot of great kids out there that are working hard, whether it be academically or with specific skill sets to go out and continue to make this world function. And I just was really touched that they asked me to be involved, and I certainly hope that I'm invited back because it was a wonderful experience. That's all I have for you.
Thank you. Township manager.
I was able to secure 2 proposals from local companies for the purpose of videotaping our township meetings. One was from Applied Video Technology. They're headquartered out of Kimberton, Pennsylvania, and the second on video, also known as the Media Message. They're headquartered out of Media, PA. Applied Video Technology, they perform video services for Bensalem Township, Lansdale Borough, Limerick Township, Lower Providence, Upper Merion, and Upper Providence. On video, Springfield, Norristown in the past, they videoed East Norristown and Upper Merion. So both clearly are experienced. Applied Video has a larger footprint in the area. Now, question I'm sure on everybody's mind, what will this cost? In the case of on video, if the board, now being in the cases of both companies, these would be one-year contracts. In the case of on video, if the board would want 1 meeting a month videotaped, that would cost $625 per meeting for about $7,500 per year. If the board wanted 2 meetings videotaped, they would reduce the cost per meeting down to about $510, the result being it would be $1,020 a month for about $12,240. Applied Video had a couple of different ways of approaching it. Their recommended way was to actually have 2 cameras and 2 personnel. The reason for the 2 cameras, obviously, it would give a better spread as far as the audience, better visuals. They'd be able to focus in on the board more effectively and whoever was speaking. In that case, they would charge $650 per meeting, $1,300 per month for $15,600 per year. I asked them to consider a more scaled down, and they came back with a quote of $375 per meeting, $750 per month, or about $9,000 per year. However, there's a caveat to that, and that is that charge is tied to a the assumption that they'll be here no longer than 3 hours. So if they stay longer, it would be $75 per hour. Realistically, I think 3 hours would be a little light. It's month from month to month to month. I'd like to think that's all you have, but I've been to a few meetings already that have gone more than 3 hours. So adding the $75 and carrying it through the year, I think a more realistic number would be just north of $10,000. So low side, maybe about 7,500, high side 15,600, and you've heard the different possibilities based on what level of service it is that you feel most comfortable with. So I didn't present the information here this evening with the anticipation the board would vote on it tonight. I wanted to give the board a good sense of what the range, what kind of numbers you're looking at. Of course, this has not been plugged into our 2019 budget. Okay. So I offer that as my report to the
Any questions?
Personally, I think we should just table it, digest it, study it.
Yeah, let's table it. It's possible there may be other lower cost options. I mean, just from the list of townships you mentioned, those are all townships that are much larger and much larger budgets than we have.
Well, then what we'll do is make a motion to table. For now, we'll look for others.
Do we need to make a motion? Or just-
Yeah, this one has an update, so if that's the case of the board, then go wrong with that. I'm not wrong with
Yes.
So Sherry Schweitzer, Pine Road, Terry, do those quotes include storage fees? Because collecting the video is one thing, but then you're going to have a repository where you maintain that video for a certain amount of time. So that might be something you want to look at as you look at these suppliers.
To your point, Sherry, Applied Video, they have their own website, www.municipalmeeting.com. They'll upload our video to that site.
For free.
Well, I didn't want to get into all that minutia, but since you brought it up, the annual charge for that service, I judge it to be reasonable, $695 a year. So we would be able to, what I would envision is we would on our website